Listen to your favorite shows live and on demand 24/7. Download the 77 WABC mobile app now. You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now here's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
Everybody just waiting to see what may happen. Iran threatening Israel with huge force, and there's reports it could come at any hour. Joining us now is Victoria Koch. She's a former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Trump. What do you think maybe the next 24 hours, 48 hours could look like? Clearly, the president's concerned. They're in the Situation Room as we speak.
Well, Rita, good to be with you. Yeah, I think the activities have started. There are now credible reports that the Iraqi Popular Mobilization Forces, the Iranian proxies in Iraq, have fired a couple of rockets at Al-Assad Air Force Base in western Iraq, which houses the bulk of the U.S. troops who are still in country, and that several of them were injured. We have, thank God, no reports of anyone dying, but American service people being injured is a very serious thing. And it just shows us that the Iranians don't differentiate between the Israelis and the Americans. We're the great Satan. They're the little Satan, but we're both Satan. So the more we allow daylight to appear between us, which is what the Biden-Harris administration has been determined to do over the last months, that just gives them, as far as they're concerned, gravy, because it's great because we're splitting apart rather than bonding together really tightly at this time of crisis.
You know, Victoria, I was going to ask about that because President Biden, and it came out, obviously, I think intentionally, he wanted it to come out that there was this daylight that you talked about. Because after he had a conversation with Netanyahu, he essentially said, don't escalate, or we may not have your back. That's a pretty serious message. And that only emboldens our allies, emboldens our adversaries, rather, like Iran and like these others. And also, I was just seeing a list a little bit ago. I was astounded. I knew that the U.S. has been withholding some sort of weaponry, but there was a whole list of different weaponry that Israel's been asking for, and they still don't have it. Here they are, one of our greatest allies in the world, our most important ally in the Middle East, and we're not supplying them? I mean, it's like we're asking them to fight with one arm tied behind their back.
No, this is not when you do this. If you have an issue with a partner or ally, you do it when things have calmed down, not when they're in the middle of a shooting war. But unfortunately, there's a shameful Democrat history of doing this to Israel going back to Barack Obama and John Kerry in 2014, 10 years ago, when we were in yet another Gaza war that they didn't get resolved. Slow-walking javelins, I believe it was, that Kerry did. And, I mean, it sends the worst possible signal. It sends the signal that the United States won't let Israel win, that they're always going to have not Israel's back, but the Palestinians' back. And that means the Palestinians never get the memo that they've lost. They lost 50 years ago. And they've been in this perpetual victimhood grievance state since then. But no one will let them get to the point where they admit they've lost. They've been defeated. That's what's new about this particular war, is Israel's in there to finish the job. As President Trump has said repeatedly, we should help them do it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Judge Weinberg.
Victoria, good to talk to you again. I'll tell you what troubles me enormously. They're telling them don't do a preemptive strike, which is bad in and of itself. But then they say, if you are attacked, we're not going to defend you if you go aggressive in that. In other words, you're allowed to knock the missiles out of the air, but you're not allowed to go and blow up the fuel supplies of the Iranians. I mean, what is with that?
Well, that's their whole policy, Judge, because that defines the Biden-Harris approach to Yemen, for example, where they will only strike, if you call it that, defensively. So if they see a missile or a drone that's ready to go and hit us, they will permit that strike to be taken, but they won't let you go in and preemptively take out the infrastructure that's supplying that. And that's why the fact that the Houthis still aren't on a foreign terrorist organization list is so shameful, because what that particular designation, unlike the special designate global terrorist designation, the FTO allows you to go after people who are providing material support to the terrorist group in question, like the Iranians.
Yeah, it's like they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. You know what I just saw the other day, Victoria, that finally Zelensky was cheering in Ukraine because he finally got the F-16s. They have been asking for the F-16 since the start of the war, which is now years, plural. I mean, how is that any way to like support your ally? And I feel like it's sort of the same thing that we're seeing with Israel.
No, it's crazy, and we've taken a lot of criticism for this at Heritage. But 2 years ago, we started raising the issue of why, if you know, when at that point 2 years ago, when Ukraine had the momentum, was on the offensive, why don't we have a strategy to win this war? Why aren't we working closely with major NATO allies to get this done so Putin doesn't do it again? And that never happened. We just had emergency supplemental after emergency supplemental, endless hand-wringing about where we're going to send tanks, where we're going to send planes. Now suddenly the F-16s are a good idea. Could they have been decisive 2 years ago? Maybe. Are they decisive now? I'm not so sure, because now the Russians are really entrenched.
Yeah, and guess what? We have to remind everybody, Kamala Harris always says she was the last person in Joe Biden's ear on major decisions. And that includes, Israel, obviously everything that's happening with Ukraine, Afghanistan. The list goes on and on and on. There's a lot of areas for Trump to hit on here.
100%. And I think, for the former president, the anniversaries that are coming up, because this time 4 years ago, his National Security Council staff was putting the final touches on what would become the Abraham Accords. They were announced the second week in August and then signed in the White House lawn in September. And then we got to the last one in Morocco in December. But that is 4 years ago. That's what 4 years of President Trump got us. And now we are looking at, after 4 years of Biden-Harris, what do we have? We have Israel in the most danger in 50 years, literally tonight, and the U.S.-Israel relationship in the worst position it's ever been.
Yeah, it speaks volumes, just as you said. What a contrast. Victoria Coates, thank you so much. We love having you here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care, Rita.
Thank you.